Those can be dismissed for junior church if you're going. We're going to be in Luke chapter 15. Open your Bibles to Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15. And it's not going to be what what most typical pastors are going to be doing today. I know what today is. I know it's this thing called Palm Sunday. I know what I'm supposed to preach on Palm Sunday, but I just don't feel like that's what the Lord wanted me to preach today. So maybe next week I'll cave and give you something about the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But today we're not going to talk about Palm Sunday. Yeah. We'll get to that after church. Okay. So, but we're going to be in Luke chapter 15. Maybe next week on Easter I'll preach something on the death, burial, and resurrection. And I said the right word. It's not Resurrection Sunday. It's Easter. Because the word Easter is in your King James Bible. The word Easter is in there. It is a pagan holiday in the Bible. It is a pagan holiday today. You want to use it to celebrate Jesus Christ, I have no problem with that. I got no problem with people calling it Resurrection Sunday, but we're going to call a spade today, and if it says Easter, that means Easter, because that book says what it says, and that's what it means. So we're going to get in, didn't mean to get onto that pedestal, I'm sorry. We're in Luke chapter 15 right now. Luke chapter 15, we're going to pick it up in verse 25. Luke 15:25. It says, "Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the servants, and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry, and he would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he answered and said unto his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed at any time thy commandment, and you never gavest me a kid, that I might marry and with my friends. But as soon as thy son was come, which he hath devoured his living with harlots, and thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. And it was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found." Brother Aaron, would you pray for us, please? Amen. Yep. Amen. So many of you guys know this story. This is the tail end of a story that is commonly known as the prodigal son, right? And if you go back all the way into Luke 15, you'll find that there was a man who has two sons. Right, that's the only thing it mentions was his two sons, and his younger brother demanded a portion of his inheritance, and he demanded it early, and so that he can go do with what he wanted with it, and he wanted what was owed to him right now. That's verse 11 or so, and he took that inheritance and he left, and he went off to what the Bible calls a far country, and he blew it on what the Bible called riotous life. Now, what the older brother says here at the end of the chapter shows us exactly what he meant by riotous life. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but he woke up one day, and the younger brother woke up one day and realizes I'm broke. I've taken everything that I've had and I've squandered it, and I've done useless things with it, things that made me have a little bit of pleasure here and now in the moment, and now guess what? I have nothing. He woke up one day and realized he was flat broke. And when I mean flat broke, he was flat broke. You know what he ended up doing? He ended up going to work for a farmer in the area, in that far country. He went to go to work in that far country, and he was feeding hogs. Now that seems like a pretty laborious task, and one that seems unpleasant anyway. But you have to understand who's telling this story. Jesus Christ, and he was a Jew, right? If you have a red letter Bible, you know this is Jesus Christ speaking, right? This is a Jew speaking, and hogs were an unclean animal, right? So not only were you not supposed to eat them, you're not supposed to touch them, you're not supposed to habit the same space as them, you're not supposed to be around them, right? They are unclean, right? So he takes a job working for a farmer feeding hogs and tending hogs, which is meant to be as low as a Jew can get, right? And he realizes, he wakes up one day and he realizes, I'm so broke that I need this job and I got to do this. And he's feeding the hogs one day, and he yearned and he desired to fill his belly with the slop that he was feeding hogs. Soon came the realization that some of his servants that his father had worked for his father never had to worry about food. They never had to worry about where they were going to sleep. They never had to worry about how much food was going to be there. It was always going to be provided for them. So once he realized, well, man, some of these servants that my dad worked for my dad, have it way better than I do. And he says in verse 17 that if he continues where he was at, he was going to perish. He was going to die. He was going to perish with hunger. It was going to consume him to the point where he could no longer go on. He decides to go back. He decides to go back home to Daddy and admit his sin and his foolishness. And he begs Daddy for forgiveness. And he asks to become a hired hand. He didn't ask for his position back. He asked to be a hired hand. So the son learned a few things while he was gone, right? He asked to be a hired hand so he can make his own way in the service of his father. Now, his daddy had different plans. His daddy had different plans. His daddy put a robe on his back and a ring on his finger and gave him some new shoes. And he tells one of his servants to go kill a fatted calf. And we're going to have a feast, right? That's verses 22, 23, somewhere around there, right? And the father, when you look at this, the father is overjoyed that this son had come back. Now, we get to our text and we see the first mention of the older brother. And he gets word that the younger brother is back. And that probably doesn't set too well with him. But then he hears that Daddy's throwing him a big old shindig. And that they're having a big old get-together. And he's killed a fatted calf. And why don't you come down and eat with us and be merry? And what does it say in verse, 25? Where'd it go? 25. Now his elder brother was in the field, and he came and drew nigh to the house and heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants to ask what was going on, verse 28, and it says he was angry. It says he was angry. See, he knew his little brother. He knew his little brother. Now, before we get into this, I want to ask a question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to hear, but how many of you have siblings? Okay? How many of you had a younger brother? How many of you are the older brother? All right? Okay. So, I am the older brother. There's 8 years difference between me and my little brother. That kid got away with murder. I mean, absolute murder in my house. Now, he'll tell you something different. He would. If he was here right now, he would say, you're a liar. But from my perspective, that kid got away with everything. Zach's in the back going, I'm not touching this. I'm not touching this right now. I'm not, because all of my kids think that Josiah gets away with murder. See, and he's not even mine. He sees it, right? Okay? Right? There's something about the older brother's view of the younger brother that needs to be taken into account here. Right? He was angry because he knew what his little brother was doing. He knew his little brother, and he knew he was going to go out and blow that money and come ask Daddy for more. That's exactly what he knew was going to happen. And when he heard that younger brother come in, he's like, I knew it. It was just a matter of time, right? That's my screw-up little brother. That's what he was going to do. And sure enough, Daddy fell right for it. Let's go kill him a fatted calf and have a big old party. Praise the Lord, your little brother's back. From the older brother's perspective, he got angry because he was in the field working where he was expected to be. And the younger brother, who should have been out in the field with him, wasn't. He had gone out and done what he wanted to do. See, the problem with the older brother is that he thought he was being a benefit to the father versus his younger brother. He had a different, perspective. He had a different idea in his head that maybe he was the reason that the farm was still going because he was out in the field working. Daddy's getting too old. Younger brother's off into a far country doing his own thing. The other reason this farm's still going is because I'm out here working. The only thing that keeps this family together was him in his own mind. And he had lost his sense of an indebtedness. Now, what do you mean by that? He had lost his sense of what he thinks he is, right? Now, for his perspective, everything that he had was given to him by his father, right? When his younger brother came and demanded his inheritance, the father gave it to him. The father gave it to him. Now, this was probably a third of everything that the father had. He cashed out some bonds or whatever he had in the bank. It says, here is a third of everything that I have in money. Here, that's your inheritance. Because the younger brother didn't want the cattle. The younger brother didn't want the field. The younger brother didn't want the livestock. The younger brother didn't want the chores. The younger brother didn't want the servants. You know what he wanted? He wanted the cash. So he can go and live what was called a riotous living. Right? So what happens to everything else? The other 2/3 go to the older son. Now, at the time that the younger brother got the inheritance, so did the older brother. It was divvied and set aside for him to have. So at the moment he got his 1/3, guess who got his 2/3? The older brother. And he's out in the field thinking, the only reason that my daddy's not broke and poor right now is because I'm out here working in the field with my inheritance, with the things that have been given to me, my stuff, my this, my that. And he overestimated his worth when it comes to what he owed his father. I hope you guys see where I'm going with this, because this is important. It's important for us to think. It's important for us to have in our mind. I bet the older brother didn't make much fuss when Daddy came along and says, well, your brother took his inheritance, so here's yours. The brother didn't have much fuss when that was going on. He acts, matter of fact, you know what he says in the text? He had forgotten some of those things. Because it says in the text, you've never even given me a kid so that I can go and make merry with my friends. Right? Now, what I mean by kid is not a child. A kid is a kid of the goats. It's something that he can go to the market and sell and go have fun with his friends, right? He says, but you give that kid over there, that little brother over there who went and squandered everything that he had, you gave him 1/3 of everything you owned, and you didn't even give me a kid. But he did. He gave him everything else. He'd already forgotten those things. He had lost perspective of what was actually done for him. He had lost his sense of indebtedness. He had lost his sense of where he was in relation to his father. His father gave the younger his inheritance early, so he got his inheritance. You never gave me anything. The older brother had forgotten all that his father had done for him. I'm reminded of the disciples. Matthew chapter 16. Do you remember the disciples in Matthew chapter 16? It says, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000. How many loaves have you took up? This is Jesus talking. He says, don't you remember the five loaves that we had and the 5,000 people that we fed? Don't you remember how many loaves we took up? They had forgotten the miracles they saw. They had forgotten some of the things that had happened to them. Peter did this. Peter was probably the poster child for this. And before I really get into this, I want you to understand how much I admire and respect Peter in the Scripture, because none of us can do and be what Peter was. Let's just be blunt, and like I said this earlier, we're going to call a spade a spade. Peter was a better Christian than all of us, myself included. He was a good man. He had a good heart. He had a filthy mouth sometimes, and he had a temper. But man, that guy loved Jesus Christ. I mean, he loved him. Was willing to lay down his life for him, right? So before we get into me bashing Peter about one of the things that he had wrong, let's just start by saying Peter was a great man of God. And I'm reminded of Peter when Jesus told him, every single one of you guys are going to turn your back on me. What did Peter say? Not me. No. He says, you got it wrong, Lord. Think about that statement. Think about that statement for just a second. Okay. He says, not me. That's not happening. That's not happening to me, Lord. And he says, Peter, tonight. What do you mean tonight? That's going to happen to you tonight. Tonight. Not only are you going to forget me, you're going to deny me. Not only are you going to not be there for me, you're going to outright deny me. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now I know Peter had to walk away from that conversation going, man, he's finally cracked. He's finally lost it. There's no way I would ever do that to him. See, what happened was Peter forgot who he was talking to. Peter had forgotten some of the miracles that he had seen Jesus Christ do. Peter had forgotten the people raising up from the dead. People had forgotten the lame being healed. People had forgotten the halt, the maimed, the lame, the dead, the blind. He had forgotten all of those things he had seen Jesus Christ do. He forgot who Jesus Christ was for a moment, and he actually forgot he forgot the deity of Jesus Christ. He forgot that he had the physical manifestation of God standing right in front of him. And you know what he did? He called Jesus a liar. He said, there is no way that is happening to me. Now that's somebody who walked and talked and slept next to and worked and labored with Christ. And that night, he denied Jesus 3 times. After he had laid his life down for Jesus Christ. I mean, there's a whole company of soldiers coming. What does Peter do? Hold on, Lord. Here we go. Let's go. Bring it on. Shove Jesus behind me. Took a first swipe at that soldier as soon as he got within range, didn't he? Someone who was willing to put his life in the line for Jesus Christ. And that very same night, he denied him 3 times. You want to know why? Because Jesus said he was going to do it. He had forgotten some things about the Lord. And that's exactly what happened here. The older brother had forgotten some things that his father had done for him. He had forgotten some things about where his position was and where he stood. You know, he had forgotten the person of Christ, and he had forgotten the deity, just like Jesus, just like Peter did. As Christians, we often say how grateful and thankful we are. And we often see the blessings of others, and then we get discouraged when we see the blessings of others. We turn around and tell the Lord we're thankful for what we have and for grateful for what we have, and then we see others get blessed. And instead of praising the Lord for his blessings and his mercy, what do? We get all bent out of shape, and what do we say in ourselves? We say, well, I can't believe the Lord would do that to them when they got XYZ going on in their life. Did you see what their kid wore the other day? I can't believe the Lord's blessing them when there's stuff like that going on. Did you see what happened over there the other day? And the Lord's blessing them? We often forget just how good God is to us. That's exactly what the older brother did. He forgot how good his daddy has been to him. See, the older brother gets upset about the younger brother's 1/3. Now, there's a lesson to be learned in that too, in that maybe you should keep your nose in your 2/3 instead of in your brother's 1/3. Make sure that you have your house in order before you go and start making a mess in somebody else's house. He wanted to point out to his father that the younger brother had wasted his inheritance. To be honest, I don't even think the older brother was angry at his little brother for screwing it all up. I think he expected that. I think he expected that to happen. To be honest with you, I think where the older brother got angry was with his daddy. I think he became angry when the father showed favor to the younger brother, when he was the one who was being faithful in his service. The older brother forgot the forgiving nature of his father. See, the older brother had forgotten his place in the family. He had forgotten his place and his worth in the grand scheme of things. But the other thing he forgot was the forgiveness that his father has shown. If we go back to the beginning of the chapter and we read the story of the prodigal, there are 3 stories in this chapter. The first one, it starts with Jesus telling the Pharisees and scribes to show them something, and in verses 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is something called the parable of the lost sheep. And then 8 and 9 and 10 is something called, is a story about a lost coin, about a woman who loses a coin. She has 10 of them, and she loses one, and she's happy that she found the one, and everybody's looking at her like, well, why? You have 9 more. She's like, yeah, but I found the one. Right? It's the same concept as the story of the parable of the lost sheep, where he has a whole flock of them, but what does he do? He goes chasing after the one that had ran away, right? And he was happy that he got the one, yet he still had the flock. Now, it comes to the story of the prodigal son from 11 all the way to the end as a story about a lost man, and he's showing the Pharisees something. He's trying to show the Pharisees something. And he says it in verse 29. He says, and he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years have I served thee, neither transgressed at any time. Any time what? Any time the commandment. He says, I've not transgressed against you, Father. That's what the older brother says. The older brother says to the daddy, I've never came across you wrong. I've never done you wrong. Well, the older brother has overestimated his righteousness as well. Not only has he overestimated his place and he has forgotten where he is in the family, he's forgotten the forgiveness of his father, and he overestimated his righteousness. And he tells his father, I've never sinned against you. Now, unless that older brother's name was named Jesus, we know that to not be true. Are you following? See, we often do this. We get comfortable in our lives, and we often forget the unmerited favor that we have. As far as the story here, in relation to this older brother and the father has overlooked transgressions that the older son has done many times, probably never even told him about it, probably just with a little bit of grace and a little bit of long suffering, has just overlooked some of the things that the older brother had done because of who the older brother was. He was a faithful servant. He was somebody who was there all the time. He was somebody who he can rely upon. He was somebody who was faithful, right? That all was true. And because of that, he showed maybe a little bit of grace in the eyes of a transgression that came against the father. And he probably never even told the son about it. Now, we have all done this, right? If you have a child, you have done this. right? I know my kid screwed up. I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm just going to gloss over it. I'm going to be there to help him and support him. Never the I told you so, right? Never that kind of attitude. We've all done this. If you've been in any kind of work relationship, when you have, especially if you're in management, you have a one worker who's just fantastic. He's phenomenal. They are phenomenal. They do good work. If they screw up, what do? Do you ball them out for the screw up? No, you overlook it because he brings or she brings far more good than the bad. What do? It's not a big deal. You gloss over it and you're done. See, the older brother had forgotten that stuff like this actually happens. I know he has transgressed against his father because he's a human. He's a man. He's done wrong. But he forgets the forgiveness. And when he sees it manifested to someone who he deems not to be worthy, that's when he gets angry. Do you realize that the forgiveness that he showed the little brother was the same forgiveness that he showed the older brother? Many times has he claimed that same forgiveness in his own relationship with his father. That same forgiveness is the forgiveness that you saw at Calvary. That same forgiveness is the same forgiveness that the prodigal received. He forgot the sins. He forgot that his sins were no lesser than his brother's. Now, the other brother went out, and that thing called riotous living. The younger brother went out, and I'm sorry, but this is what the Bible says. The Bible says he went out and messed around with whores, and that's where all of his money went. That's the biblical term. He wasted it all on a harlot. Now, the older brother sees that, and he knows that's where that money went. The money went to drinking and drugs and riotous living. Sex, drugs, rock and roll is the saying, right? That he knows that's where all of his inheritance went. And he saw that as a more egregious sin than anything he has ever done against his father. But you know what it says? He says, you've never given me a kid to go out and do that with my friends. So the older brother, maybe this is me just reading some things into it. The older brother had the means to go do it. He just never had the opportunity to. If he had been given the same opportunity as the younger brother, I think he'd have fallen into the same thing that the younger brother did. He just had more of a sense of responsibility to his daddy than the younger brother did. He says, if I had a kid to go have fun with my buddies, I'd have done it too. But he never did, so he sees the younger brother's sin as far more egregious than his. Well, they weren't. They were sins. He had forgotten the forgiveness that his daddy had shown him. And when he showed it to somebody who he deemed not worthy, he got angry about it. See, the older brother forgot the blessings that had already been bestowed upon him. He forgot about those things that were already promised to him. He already had the 2/3 of the inheritance, but when the father dies, he gets it fully. But look what he says in verse 31. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. You know, we all do this. We all forget just how good that God is to us. We need to remember the blessings that he forgot. You realize the house that he was living in was given to him by his father. The job that he has, the flocks that he has, was given to him by his father. The inheritance was the father's to give. Now, we look at those things when we receive the inheritance as that is my by right. But whose was it to give? It was the father's to give. It was the Father's to give. Everything the older brother had was because of the grace of the Father. And the only reason I'm here today, the only reason I have what I have, is because of the grace and mercy of my Father. The same goes for you. Same goes for each and every one of us. The only thing that I have, everything that I have, is given to me of my Father. My wife, she's described in the Bible as a helpmeet unto me. You know what the Bible says about that helpmeet? She was designed and created to be a part of me. I mean, come on. If that's not a blessing, I don't know what is. I talked about it a little bit in Sunday school this morning. There are times, you have a helpmeet, when there are times where she is worried about some things and is kind of on edge and panicking about some things and is in chaos internally because of the situation that we may be in, and she will be panicking and frantic on some things, and I will be as calm and collected as can be and say, look, here's what we're going to do, here's what the Lord's going to take care of for us, and we're going to go. Right? And that's it. And then the same situation can come up 6 months later, and I'm at my wit's end, and I'm panicking, and don't know what we're going to do, and my wife, who was panicking over the same thing just a couple months ago, is as calm and cool as collected as can be, and says to me, hey, knucklehead, wake up. God's going to take care of that for us. Remember the time you said that to me? So we need to understand that the things that have been given to me, to each and every one of us in our lives, is because God allowed it to be given to us, or He did it Himself. He put me in the path of a woman who was going to be a completion of me, who was going to be able to balance out the things that I can't balance out, right? That's a gift from God. And that was given to me by God. The financial blessings that I get, guess who gives those? The Lord gives those. The house that I have, guess who allowed me to have that? Guess who provided that for me? The Lord did that for me. I have a nice vehicle for the first time in my life, one that I don't have to worry about breaking down. I finally got out of the clunker mobiles, right? Guess who did that for me? The Lord. You know what else He did for me? He put my daughter in the clunker mobiles. So I don't get a little too highfalutin for those types of things. I still have to work on cars. I still have to make sure that everything is drivable. Right? He did that for me too. All of these things, everything that I have in my life, and I've been tremendously blessed. And I'm saying me, but I mean all of you too. Every single one of you guys, look at your life for a second. Think about something good that you have in your life, and guess who did that? That was God. That wasn't me. That wasn't you. If it was left up to you, you'd have screwed it up. If it was left up to me, I'd have screwed it up. The Lord took care of a lot of things for us. He takes care of things that we have no concept and no clue that He took care of. You realize there's a whole spiritual war going on above our heads right now. There's a whole war going on being fought in an unseen realm that we can't see, taste, smell, or hear, right? And guess what? The Lord is there providing the protection for us in those times. The book of Daniel describes some of this stuff. How when Gabriel was coming to speak to Daniel about an answer to prayer, that something withheld him. Right? Michael had to come and help him fight off the devil so that Gabriel can free himself to come give Daniel an answer to prayer. You know how many times the Lord has held back an attack from the devil? Or an attack from a spiritual force that we didn't even know was coming? We'll never know how many times the Lord has done that for us until we get to glory. And He'll get to show us those things. Hey, remember that time? Well, this is what was coming for you. Guardian angels are real people. They're just not portrayed the same way that are portrayed in mainstream media. those things happen. They forgot the blessing. The older brother just forgot those things. He forgot the blessings that he had been given. He forgot his place. He forgot who he was in the grand scheme of things. He was a servant that was supposed to be serving for the Lord. His Lord was his father. He was somebody who was supposed to be putting their head down, pushing through the hard times, serving the Lord, doing what was right. And for the most part, he was doing that, but he forgot his place there for a little while. And then he forgot the forgiveness that his father had given him. He had forgotten all of the times that God had overlooked his transgressions because of some silliness that goes on. See, the problem is, I think there's a little bit of the older brother in all of us. There's a little bit of that older brother in all of us. Now, we're still in the Father's house. The older brother was still in the Father's house. The older brother was still in the graces of his father. The older brother was still reaping the benefits and inheritances and rewards of his father. But he had some things he had to deal with. I think there's a little bit of the older brother in all of us. I think sometimes we forget our place in the grand scheme of things. I think sometimes when it comes to my relationship with the Lord, I overestimate my value to God. And I think that goes the same for all of you. The Bible says that a man who thinks more than he is deceived and a fool. Anybody here never been guilty of being deceived? Anybody here never done a foolish thing? Okay. Glad we're all on the same page. Because I sure know that I have oftentimes overestimated my value to God. God, if you would just do this in my life, I can do so much more. I can be so much better. Paul prayed the same prayer. Lord, take this thorn away from me. Can you imagine what I can get done without this thorn? Paul said that thorn, God said that thorn is there for a reason, Paul. We often forget our place when it comes to God. He's in control. He's in charge. He knows things that we don't know. We often forget the forgiveness of God, especially when we see it given to others and we don't think they deserve it. Just like the older brother didn't think the younger brother deserved that forgiveness. You claim that forgiveness all the time. Look, there are people out there who do some terrible things. Don't they deserve forgiveness? Don't they deserve to go to? Don't you think that it would be a blessing to the Lord to have that name written down in the Lamb's Book of Life? Yeah. So why do you think they're unworthy of that forgiveness? That's the same forgiveness that you claimed. And I oftentimes forget that just how good God's been to me. I mean, God's been real good to us. And look, if you're sitting here today, God's been good to you. If you're sitting in a hospital bed right now, guess what? God's still been good to you. If you're flat on your back and the only place you can look is up, guess what? God's still been good to you. Because it could have been a whole lot worse, I promise you. If you're saved, man, God has been. If that's all God does, if that's the only time we allow God to work in our lives, is at that moment of salvation, He has done more for us than we can ever repay with 1,000 years of works. He's been good to us. He's promised us a place to go. He's promised us His Son is going to come back and take us away from this filth and this garbage that we have to deal with day in and day out. Don't you think that's a blessing? I mean, don't you think God's been pretty good to us? Don't you think that God has says, you know what? You could have been dying with a needle in your arm in a ditch somewhere, but you know, I saved you from that. Don't you think God's been good to you? I think God's been real good to me. Don't forget those blessings. Don't forget those things the Lord has done for you. See, this older brother, he forgot his place. He forgot the forgiveness. And he forgot the blessings. And I see the older brother in my life. And I pray that you can see that older brother in your life and get rid of some of those things. Maybe this is just a reminder of things that you already know. Maybe it's Maybe it's a form of encouragement to do better on some of these things. I don't know. Whatever it was, the Lord wanted you to understand that oftentimes we forget the blessings that we have. We oftentimes forget just how good God is to us. And oftentimes we forget where we stand with the Lord. So let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this blessed book. Lord, I pray that with every head bowed and every eyes closed, Lord, I pray that they don't forget these blessings that you've given to us, Lord. If any of these people here have not received the blessing and forgiveness and don't have a place in your kingdom just yet, Lord, I pray that you put it on their hearts and minds now. Lord, I pray that you help them to get it taken care of before they ever leave. Lord, I pray that you help us to remember the blessings you've given us. Lord, thank you so much for your Son who gave the sacrifice for us so that we can have the forgiveness of sins. Lord, I pray that we remember our place and humble ourselves before you for the perfecting of the saints. Lord, thank you for everything you've done for us. Help us to have a spirit of thankfulness and a spirit of gratitude and a spirit of humility in our Christian walk, Lord. Thank you for everything you've done for us, Lord. I pray that you bring us back when these doors are open again, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.